I found out my marriage was a lie because of a photo. Not a confession. Not a dramatic argument with tears and slammed doors. No, just one little photo she posted without thinking in a mirror that didn't lie. It was a Friday night. I'd just finished a long week at work, the kind of week that wears you down until even heating up leftovers feels like running a marathon. I was half sprawled on the couch, beer in hand, scrolling through my phone the way you do when you're too tired to do anything else. And then I saw it. A Throwback Friday post from my wife, Natalie. Captioned, "Missing our girls' trip last summer. Best weekend ever, beach with umbrella women with bunny ears, hashtag TBT, hashtag beach babes, hashtag memories." It was a cute photo at first glance. Natalie sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, grinning at the camera, legs crossed, wearing that sundress I always said made her look like a painting come to life. The room behind her was a blur of white sheets, luggage, the usual clutter from a weekend away. But then I saw it. The mirror. In the corner of the frame. Just behind her. And in the mirror, clear as day, was a man. Half-dressed. Sitting on the same hotel bed she was posing on. Laughing. At her. At the camera. At me, apparently. I sat up so fast the beer tipped over onto the carpet. A dark spreading stain that somehow didn't feel nearly as disastrous as what was happening in my chest. My first instinct was denial. It's someone else. It has to be. Maybe a hotel employee? A random guest who wandered into the shot? But no, because the man's face was turned just enough to catch the light. And I recognized him. Brian. Her ex. The one she told me she was completely over when we first started dating. The one she said was immature, toxic, a phase. The one she said she hadn't spoken to in years. He was there. In the hotel room. On the bed. On the girls' trip she'd sworn was just her, Sarah, and Claire, two of her best friends since college, women I trusted, women I'd hosted dinners with, toasted birthdays with. I stared at that mirror until my eyes burned. Stared until the world tilted sideways. Because there it was. Proof. Not blurry. Not ambiguous. Just reflected truth, plain and cruel. And Natalie, my wife, hadn't even noticed it. I didn't confront her right away. Maybe that sounds weak. Maybe it was. But in that moment, I wasn't ready to hear whatever excuse she was about to offer. I wasn't ready for the version of her that was going to lie to my face. Because some part of me still hoped, stupidly, desperately, that there was an explanation that made sense. That this wasn't the full collapse of everything we'd built. That maybe, I could wake up tomorrow and find out it was just a bad dream. Instead, I sat there in the dark living room, the hum of the fridge the only sound in the whole house, and let the weight of it press down on me until I felt small enough to disappear. I thought about our wedding day. How beautiful she looked walking down the aisle, clutching her bouquet so tight her knuckles turned white. How she'd cried when we exchanged vows, real tears, not the ones you fake for the camera. How she'd promised we were it for each other. Forever. I thought about the trip she took, how excited she was to get away, how she texted me pictures of spa lunches and poolside cocktails. No mention of Brian. No mention of a man waiting back in the room. No mention of a lie big enough to drown us both. I picked up my phone again. Stared at the photo. Zoomed in. Brian wasn't just lounging in the background. He was looking at her. The way a man looks at a woman he thinks belongs to him. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the beer to soak through the carpet. Long enough for the photo to burn itself into my brain. Long enough for something inside me, something fragile and stupid, to finally break. When Natalie got home that night, humming as she tossed her purse on the counter, I was still sitting there. Still holding the phone. Still staring at the mirror. She kissed my head on autopilot, not noticing how stiff I was, how cold. "Hey, babe," she said, rummaging through the fridge for a snack. "You okay?" I didn't answer. I just turned the phone toward her. Held it up like a weapon. Watched the moment her whole body went still. Watched the blood drain from her face. Watched the exact second she realized her past, the one she thought she could hide, had come knocking with a vengeance. And it wasn't leaving quietly. For a second, she didn't say anything. Just stared at the screen in my hand like if she blinked hard enough, maybe it would all just go away, like the man in the mirror would vanish, and we could go back to the easy lie we were living. But mirrors don't lie. And neither did my gut, not anymore. Finally, she spoke. "It's not what it looks like," Natalie said, voice small, almost rehearsed. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Because I wanted to see what story she was about to spin. I wanted to watch her try to untangle herself from a noose she tied with her own hands. "I didn't even know he was coming," she said. He just showed up. Sarah and Claire must have invited him without telling me. He wasn't supposed to be there. It was a good story. Tidy. Plausible, if you squinted hard enough and ignored the iron taste of betrayal already flooding your mouth. But it didn't explain the look between them in that mirror. It didn't explain why she hadn't said a single word about it when she came back from that trip. It didn't explain the late-night texts she used to get and swipe away, so fast I barely had time to catch the name on the screen. It didn't explain the sudden girls' nights that seemed more frequent, more urgent, more desperate. You expect me to believe that? I asked, finally. My voice didn't even sound like mine, low, raw, like it had been scraped against gravel. I swear, she said, tears starting to well up now. It didn't mean anything. He stayed in a different room. It was just one night. I didn't even talk to him after that. Really? I said, cold. Because it looks like he was very comfortable in your hotel room. She flinched. A small tell, but a tell all the same. And I knew. I knew it in the way you know a storm's coming before the clouds even gather. You slept with him, I said, flat. No, she gasped. Too fast. Too rehearsed. I would never. And that's when she broke. Not because she wanted to. Because she couldn't hold the weight of the lie anymore. Natalie sank into the nearest chair like her legs just gave out. She buried her face in her hands and started sobbing, those awful, heaving cries that sound less like grief and more like guilt trying to escape the body. I was drunk, she choked out. I didn't plan it. I didn't even want it to happen. It just happened. I finished for her, bitter. God, if I had $1 for every time I've heard someone say that after they set fire to their own life. I stood there, feeling like I was watching someone else's tragedy unfold. Like my own heart had already evacuated the scene. You lied, I said. For a whole year. She looked up, mascara streaking down her face. Because I didn't want to lose you. I almost laughed. Like I wasn't already lost. Like the second she let another man into our marriage, she hadn't already thrown a match into everything we built. You should have thought of that, I said quietly, before you chose him. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. Like it could crush you if you stayed under it too long. I didn't choose him, she whispered. I was scared. We were fighting so much back then. I thought maybe I wasn't good enough for you. And when he showed up, it was easy. It was stupid. It didn't mean anything. I shook my head. Not because I didn't understand, but because I did. That's what hurt the most. I knew what fear felt like. I knew how tempting it was to run when things got hard, how easy it would be to slip into something reckless just to feel wanted again. But I stayed. I stayed and fought for us. And she didn't. I was right there, Natalie, I said. Every ugly, hard, miserable day. I stayed. She was sobbing openly now, pleading with her eyes, but I didn't move. I didn't comfort her. Not this time. Because you don't bandage a wound by lying about how deep it goes. You have to see it. You have to feel every inch of it. And she needed to feel this, needed to sit in the ruins she made. Please, she said, voice breaking. Please don't leave. I stood there, staring at the woman I once thought I'd grow old with, and realized something brutal and freeing all at once. The woman I loved didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. Maybe she was just a mirror, too, reflecting back what I wanted so badly to believe. And me? I was tired of believing in ghosts. I turned and walked toward the door. Not because I didn't love her, but because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave the fire before it takes you down with it. As I opened the door, she called after me. Where are you going? I didn't look back. I just said, somewhere the mirrors tell the truth. And then I stepped into the night, into the unknown, into whatever came next. The first few days after I walked out were a blur. I stayed at a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering parking lot lights and vending machines that swallowed your quarters without a second thought. I wasn't ready to call family. Wasn't ready to answer questions. I needed silence. I needed space. The only calls I answered were from my best friend, Mark. He was the kind of guy who didn't need all the ugly details to show up with a six-pack and sit quietly beside you, like his presence alone was enough to say, you're not crazy. You're not alone. We sat on the motel bed, the TV flickering some old basketball game we weren't really watching, while I finally told him everything. The photo, the mirror, the confession. Mark didn't say much, just let out a low whistle and shook his head the way a man does when words won't cut it. You want me to go slash his tires? He said finally, half serious. I laughed short, broken, and for the first time in days, it didn't feel like the world was ending. Thanks, man, I said. But I think she already did a pretty good job burning it all down. He nodded. sipped his beer, and then said something that stuck in my ribs. You didn't lose her, Dan. You lost the version of her you build in your head. That's not the same thing. I didn't answer, because he was right. And sometimes the truth stings worse than the lie. The next morning, it started. The texts, the calls, the check-ins from people who hadn't cared enough to notice when things were starting to rot from the inside out. Sarah texted first, one of the best friends from the girls' trip. Hey, Dan. Just heard what happened. So sorry you're hurting. Please know Natalie never meant to hurt you. She's devastated. She still loves you. I stared at the screen like it was written in a language I didn't speak. Still loves me? The woman who slept with her ex and lied to my face for a year? Funny definition of love. Then Claire messaged. Another one of the girls. Her text was shorter, sharper. You owe it to each other to work through this. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistake. That word rattled around in my head like a bullet. Like sleeping with your ex and lying about it for 12 months was the same thing as forgetting to take out the trash. But it wasn't just the girls. It was others too. Mutual friends. Neighbors. People who had stood and clapped at our wedding. Some were sympathetic. Others, less so. Some hinted that maybe I had pushed her away without realizing it. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I didn't make her feel desired enough. Maybe. Funny how fast people build theories when they don't have to sit with the broken pieces. And through all of it, one thing became excruciatingly clear. People weren't choosing sides based on right or wrong. They were choosing sides based on comfort, on convenience, on who made them feel less awkward at barbecues and birthday parties. And Natalie, beautiful, charming Natalie, made people comfortable. Me? I was the messy one now. The one who made people squirm because I wouldn't pretend it hadn't happened. I stopped answering texts. Stopped picking up calls. Stopped trying to explain myself to people who were more invested in keeping the peace than protecting the truth. Mark stayed, though. Sat with me through long nights where the silence pressed down like a second skin. He didn't tell me to forgive her. He didn't tell me to move on. He just sat. And sometimes, that's all you need. One person who doesn't ask you to smile when your whole damn life just went up in smoke. After a week at the motel, I finally went back to the house. Not because I missed her. Because it was mine, too. Because I wasn't going to let her betrayal exile me from my own life. I pulled into the driveway to find her car gone. Good. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Her stuff was mostly cleared out, closet hangers swinging empty, the bathroom counter bare except for my old razor and a bottle of aspirin. She'd left a note on the kitchen table. Short. Sweet. Gut-wrenching. I'll stay at Sarah's for now. I'm sorry, Dan. If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me. I crumpled it without reading it twice. Because here's the thing. You don't burn down a man's house and then leave a forwarding address. You don't kill something and then ask to have a conversation about it later. You don't cheat and then act like you're still entitled to a seat at the table you broke. I stood in the middle of the empty kitchen, breathing in the hollow smell of loss, and realized something I hadn't been ready to admit until that exact moment. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I thought was real. The version that never existed. And now? It was time to bury that ghost. Not with anger. Not with rage. With something better. Indifference. Because heartbreak doesn't end when you scream loud enough. It ends when you go quiet inside. When you stop giving CPR to a corpse. When you realize you deserve more than someone else's half-hearted regret. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the first tiny flicker of freedom. The first few days back in the house were strange. It felt like living in someone else's half-forgotten life, like I was a guest in a museum of a marriage that had already ended. Little things haunted me. The empty nail where a photo used to hang, the faded outline of a missing coffee maker on the counter, a single sandal left by the door like she'd slipped out of herself in a hurry. I moved slowly, like the walls might shatter if I breathed too hard. The nights were the worst. Lying awake in a bed that smelled faintly of lavender and betrayal, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in lazy, useless circles. My mind played cruel games, replaying every laugh, every "I love you," every moment that, in hindsight, had been just a little bit off. I needed to clean. Not for hygiene. For survival. I started in the bedroom, throwing open drawers, yanking out anything that smelled like her, bagging it up without ceremony. I moved to the living room next. She'd always kept little piles, magazines she swore she'd read, unopened junk mail, random receipts. It was in one of those piles that I found it. An old laptop. Hers. It wasn't even password protected. I should have closed it. I should have boxed it up and left it on her doorstep without looking. But hurt people don't always make wise choices. And some awful, itching instinct made me open it. At first, it was normal. Work documents, vacation photos, shopping lists. And then, tucked deep into the personal folder, I found a file labeled Memories. I clicked, and there it was. Photos. Hundreds of them. From the girl's trip, the one that had started this whole unraveling. But not the photos she had posted. These were private, unfiltered, undeniable. There were shots of her and Brian at dinner, laughing over candlelight. Him carrying her on his back through the hotel hallway, her arms wrapped tight around his neck. Selfies on the beach, just the two of them, faces pressed close, sunglasses hiding what their bodies shouted loud and clear. There were even videos. One of her lying in bed, giggling as Brian kissed her shoulder and said something low and intimate I couldn't bear to replay. This wasn't a drunken mistake. This wasn't a one-night stumble. This was a weekend romance. A rekindled fire. A full betrayal wrapped in sunshine and cocktails and lies. I sat there, scrolling through image after image, feeling like I was watching my own funeral in slow motion. And then, tucked at the very end, I found the worst one. A video. A minute long. She was sitting on the hotel bed, hair messy, wearing his t-shirt. She was talking to the camera, her phone, I realized. Probably recording something for herself. I don't know what I'm doing, she said, laughing softly. I shouldn't be here. But it feels so good to be seen again. To be wanted. Not just safe. She paused. Smiled. Maybe this is who I really am. I closed the laptop so fast it nearly snapped in half. Because I finally understood something brutal and clean. She didn't just betray me. She chose it. She wanted it. And maybe the worst part? She didn't even seem sorry. She was sorry she got caught. But not sorry for what she did. There's a difference. A big one. I packed the laptop in a box with the rest of her things. Taped it shut. Wrote her name on top in big black letters. And then I drove across town to Sarah's place, the haven she was hiding in, and left it on the doorstep. No note. No text. Nothing. Let her deal with the ashes. I wasn't sifting through them anymore. That night, back in my half-empty house, I stood in front of the mirror. Same one where I used to adjust my tie before dates, weddings, funerals. Same one she used to kiss my reflection in, laughing about how she'd married up. I looked at myself, really looked, and realized something. I wasn't broken. I wasn't unlovable. I wasn't unworthy. She didn't leave because I wasn't enough. She left because she was chasing something shallow, fleeting, selfish. And if she thought she could find herself in the arms of a man who once cheated on her too, that was her tragedy. Not mine. Not anymore. I was done grieving someone who wasn't mourning me. I was done loving a ghost. I was done holding space for a woman who sold our life for a weekend fantasy. I climbed into bed that night alone. But not lonely. Not this time. This time, the silence didn't suffocate me. It saved me. 2 weeks passed. Long, strange weeks where I built a new life in the ruins of the old one. I went back to work. Started running again. Cleaned out the house. Painted the bedroom a shade of blue so different from her favorite white that it almost felt like rebellion. Grief became a hum instead of a roar. Some days it barely whispered. Other days it echoed in grocery aisles, in the songs on the radio, in the stupid way I still reached for 2 coffee mugs in the morning before remembering I only needed one. But even that ache was starting to feel manageable. Like an old injury you could predict the weather by. I thought I was done seeing her. Done hearing from her. Done explaining myself to people who only knew how to love the convenient version of our story. And then, one Saturday morning, I ran into her. Not planned. Not staged. Just bad luck. I was at the farmer's market, grabbing coffee, browsing stalls, pretending I cared about artisanal honey when really, I was just trying to stay busy. I turned a corner, and there she was. Natalie. Looking smaller somehow. Not thinner. Dimmer. Like the version of herself she had tried so hard to chase was finally starting to outrun her. She froze when she saw me. I could see it in her face. The 1,000 apologies she wanted to hurl across the gap between us. The desperate hope that maybe, somehow, she still deserved my time. But I didn't stop. I didn't approach. I just nodded, a polite, distant nod, and kept walking. And for the first time, the power wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. I heard her call my name once, soft, barely above the buzz of the crowd. But I didn't turn around, because nothing she could say would change the truth that had already been written, in mirrors, in bedsheets, in careless, cruel lies. I bought my coffee, walked to the park, sat on a bench under a tree whose leaves were just starting to burn gold at the edges. And I let it hit me. Closure doesn't come with a grand speech or a tearful confession. It comes in moments like that, simple, quiet, mundane, where you realize you don't need anything from them anymore. Not answers, not apologies, not love, not even anger, just distance, just peace, just the life you build when you finally stop trying to resurrect the one they destroyed. I sipped my coffee, watched the breeze scatter leaves across the sidewalk, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Maybe longer. Freedom. Not the kind you run toward, desperate and wild. The kind that sneaks up on you. Soft. Steady. Certain. I thought about texting Mark, telling him the streak was over, that I'd survived seeing her and didn't even crack. But I didn't. Some victories don't need a witness. Some moments are just yours. So I sat there a little longer, letting the weight fall away, letting the past settle like dust on a shelf I didn't need to touch anymore. Natalie would go on with her life. Bryant, too. Maybe they'd be happy. Maybe they'd crash and burn. Either way, it wasn't my fire to put out. Their story wasn't mine anymore. And my story? It was just getting started. A few months later, I moved. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. The house we shared had become too heavy, a museum of memories that didn't belong to me anymore. Every creak of the floorboards, every dent in the walls, every paint stain on the garage floor had a ghost attached to it. I didn't want to live with ghosts. So I found a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. One bedroom, big windows, a tiny backyard with a stubborn maple tree that looked half dead when I bought the place, but somehow still kept blooming every spring. It fit me. Not the me that had tried to force a broken marriage into something whole. Not the me that thought love meant holding on no matter how much it hurt. The me that knew better now. The me that understood home isn't a person. It's a piece you build for yourself. One box at a time. One quiet Sunday, I unpacked the last of my things. A box of old photos, some keepsakes from college, a battered copy of The Old Man, and the sea that had somehow survived 3 moves and a flooded basement. I set it on the shelf, sat back on the couch, and realized I didn't feel lonely. I felt good, settled, not in a sad, resigned way, in a free way. The kind of free that comes from finally laying down the burden of loving someone who didn't know how to love you back. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about her. Not in anger, not even in sadness. Just in that quiet, detached way you remember an old scar. A part of your story, but not the ending. Never the ending. I didn't date right away. Didn't rush to fill the empty spaces. Some nights I sat under the stars with a beer and Murphy, the mutt I finally adopted from the shelter. Watched him chase fireflies. Watched the sky stretch out wide and endless above me. And somewhere in all that quiet, I found something I didn't know I was looking for. Gratitude. Not for the betrayal. Not for the pain. But for the fact that it set me free. Free from living a life where I kept pretending things were okay. Free from a marriage that had become a house with beautiful walls and a crumbling foundation. Free to build something real. Something honest. Something mine. Maybe one day, I'll meet someone new. Someone who doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Someone who knows that passion without loyalty is just a fire waiting to burn you down. But even if I don't? Even if it's just me and the stubborn maple tree and Murphy snoring on the couch? That's enough. I'm enough. Not because someone else says so. Not because a mirror tells me. But because I finally believe it. The real kind of belief. The kind that doesn't shake when the ground does. The kind that stands. The kind that stays. And in the end, that's the only home I ever really needed. Me.